You are listening to Rechurched, a podcast aimed at instigating Christians to be Christian.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a special episode of Rechurched. My name is Ethan Hoover, and I have my co-host here, Matthew Maher.
What's up, guys?
So this is brand new for us, but we really feel like it's on our heart to have these special episodes from time to time. They may or may not actually reflect what we're going through in a particular season. But really, the purpose of these special episodes is to address a relevant topic,
Current events,
from a biblical worldview.
Correct.
And just share it.
Season 1 was systematic, right? We knew exactly where we were going. Season 2, in that same vein, is organized. We have an outline. Does not mean we won't touch on current events and how it's applicable. But from time to time, I think there is a benefit in stopping and putting out these special episodes that are going to deal with current events and provide the Christian out there with the tools to navigate these very controversial issues from a biblical worldview. So, as you know, unless you live under a rock, I believe one of the most monumental decisions in our nation's history just came out recently. There have been plenty that can be celebrated. This one includes the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
Roe v. Wade.
And a lot of people know that. It's a buzzword these days. Roe v. Wade. What is Roe v. Wade?
Who is Roe? Who is Wade?
Right. Great question. The Supreme Court obviously overturned the Roe v. Wade decision from 1973. So that's 49 years ago, which federalized or legalized abortion. Now, why is that significant? Now, somebody can do their math, get a calculator out. If the country was founded in 1776, a constitution was written, it is our governmental framework, and it wasn't until 1973 where abortion was argued to be enshrined in our constitution, which was new. So I go, wait, for 185 years, I think it is, do the math. What is 1973 minus 1776? So let's just say it's 185 years while Ethan's doing the math. For 185 years,
something like that.
That wasn't the case.
Right.
States, by and large, decided based on the populace of the state's people what that state should reflect as far as policy goes, which is why it matters who you elect into office. It's not a popularity contest, not a personality contest. It's who's going to put out the policies that are reflective of your values.
We talked a little bit about policies and politics in season 1 with the political gospel. It's not about seeing the political person as the savior, but it is about doing your part as a believer to put the right people in office.
Correct.
Right. Keep going.
So obviously, in 1973, if you put the wrong people in office, who then the president himself appoints what we call Supreme Court justices, and they all of a sudden are saying, you know what? We do see that it is a woman's right to have a federalized process for the legalization of abortion. That was followed up in 1992 by Planned Parenthood versus Casey. And of course, recently, what has brought this to the Supreme Court today? A decision or a ruling in Mississippi between Dobbs versus Jackson. And this is what caused the Supreme Court to again look at the precedence, is what they called it, of Roe v. Wade. And all these years, 49 years, going, no, it's precedence. Can't overturn it. Meanwhile, the constitutionality of it has no basis.
Right.
So the argument today is, I think we get at each other's throats about the abortion issue, pro-life, pro-choice. And I'm going, it was never constitutional from the beginning.
Right.
So
people are saying it's unconstitutional right now.
Yes.
And it's like, no, actually it was unconstitutional then.
So before we even get into the implications for a Christian or a believer to be equipped to have a conversation about these types of issues, you got to know your country's history,
right,
and why it's not constitutional. So here you have the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, and why the Christian doesn't just celebrate in these times. We should also accelerate.
Right.
Let me say that again. We celebrate because this is a monumental decision for life. God is pro-life. through and through, from the womb to the tomb. But we accelerate. So it's not a time to take our foot off the throttle because there's work to be done at the state level. So if you live in a state where abortion is now illegal, you want to work to make sure it maintains that status. If you're in a state like we are, you know what Governor Murphy just did recently? Trying to get a bill passed in light of Roe v. Wade being overturned?
No, what?
He is basically empowering New Jersey doctors. Mind you, it's legal and still in New Jersey up to a certain point. Very aggressive, actually, abortion laws in New Jersey still. So
Murphy's again.
He has made it possible for doctors who perform abortions in Jersey to cross over to state lines that might have states that don't allow it to help out, perform it, and come back to New Jersey and be protected by our state laws. Is that evil?
That's very evil.
That is evil incarnate.
Man.
To empower doctors
Murders.
to perform murder. So we want to make sure humans are involved in these situations. So we're going to look at what we should be doing as believers. Number one, we need to be informed. The Word of God informs our conscience and how we see these issues. That's where we begin. Why can I be passionate about life? Yeah, but Pastor, how about you guys are just for pro-life in the womb, and then once the baby's born, you guys don't care about the baby, and that's why we want to be pro-birth. And I'm like, these people are coming up with such shenanigans. Like, while that argument causes us to debate and lose sight of what really matters, it's not true.
Right.
The Church of Jesus Christ has always been the main outsource of life in any community, any society, from the foundation and formation of hospitals to adoption homes to foster cares to serving moms in crisis, pregnancy, life centers. Like, you go down the list, the church and the Christian has always aided and assisted this cause. So it's not just about protecting the baby in the womb. It's also about serving the woman, true women rights.
Yeah.
Because I want to do what's right for women, biblically speaking. Now, as I digress, I made a post recently about several things that are going to be a result of Roe v. Wade. And the first is, as we're seeing, scroll through social media, a convulsion of evil. Why? Because if the enemy's strategy is to kill, steal, and destroy, a victory at the national level for our country, which then delegates the decision to the state level, would cause an enemy who hates life to convulse.
Yeah.
So he is convulsing, in essence, through people everywhere as they're yelling at the top of their lungs. And that's the first thing to keep an eye on, right? So the greater the physical upheaval, the more significant the spiritual battle. There you have it. What's going on right now? People are rioting and protesting, and they're storming into churches. They're vandalizing pregnancy centers. People are taking their clothes off in the middle of a church service, with spray paint or paint on their body saying, my body, my choice. So evil will convulse. Christian, maintain your dignity. Do not get caught off guard arguing or debating. Because I just recently posted something on Facebook, and I'll get to my second point. My first point was evil will convulse, but somebody wrote me privately and was just like, what about women's rights? And they went on this like rant about the baby isn't a baby until it's born, and it's a clump of cells and all this. And I'm going, all right, I can spend a moment and respond and provide an article that shows them that no, it's not a clump of cells. At conception, it's a life, and we'll get into some of those facts in a moment. Pretty awesome stuff that Christians should be equipped to know. But I'm like, this guy has access to Google.
Yeah.
And what he's doing is he's probably Googling it, and it'll yield probably the search that he wants to yield. And basically what I'm saying, like magnets, we are all gravitating towards what we believe to be our truth. Yeah. So here's the irony. This type of guy and this mentality, guy or gal, who are yelling about women's rights, about a month ago, could not even define what a woman is.
What is a woman? Can
you
use it in a sentence, please?
Thank you, Matt Walsh, that's an awesome documentary to watch. What is a woman? He traveled across America and asked the most basic human question, what is a woman? And people couldn't answer it.
Babylon Bee did a little video of it too, of a kid with a spelling bee, and his word was woman, and he was like, woman, can you use it in a sentence, please? And they use it in a sentence, and then he's like, can you give me the definition, please? And they were like, your word is woman. And he's like, can you give me the definition, please? What is a woman? And it was just hilarious. You got to watch it.
So just so people know, a woman is an adult female. That's
if you were
it.
confused.
That's it. An adult female. So the convulsion of evil in the streets, don't get caught up in the arguments and the debates. Use prayer and discernment to know when you should provide that context or clarity. I didn't for this young man. I kind of wrote back a few things about, why for 185 years was abortion not legalized at the federal level. And then 1973, all of a sudden, there is this enlightenment, and boom, there you have it. I'm going, think about that. So what changed? Well, obviously, evil people in power changed, and that would cause that decision. Number two, you're going to see a fierce war at the state level between legislators. Why does politics matter for the Christian and the church? To get out of our comfort zone, get out of the pew, and get involved in local politics. That would include putting the right legislators in place, which would empower the state to make the right decisions for life, period. So the Christians need to be more active than ever before. Again, I say, now is not the time to just celebrate. Now is the time to do justly and accelerate. Number three is what we will see in light of Roe v. Wade being overturned. A clear separation between the apostate church and the true church. What do I mean by that? The church biblically. How do you see it? Because there are Christians by name right now that are arguing for pro-choice. Pastors who are standing in their pulpits frowning upon the overturning of Roe v. Wade. And I'm saying you're going to see a separation, again, from 2020 to today. The issues that have come down the pike have caused the church to be divided, people say. And I go, no, it's not division, it's separation. When you know Bible and you see what God is constantly doing with his church, purging and refining, he is purging the remnant. And that's why the division is blatant. So what does Roe v. Wade tell me? That we are in overtime. The overturning of the decision of Roe v. Wade tells me we are in overtime. So we stay vigilant. And there are some things that we should consider in light of Roe v. Wade being overturned. Like I said, be informed, but have the right facts. Let me go through a few things that I jotted down. This ruling, as said earlier, does not make abortion illegal nationally. All that will happen is that abortion and its restrictions will go to the state level, the legislative process in each state. The numbers are interesting. I think it might be split down the middle, Ethan. About 25 states would be more or less pro-life, protecting babies in the womb, and the other half, obviously, very aggressive in their abortion approach. Here's some interesting facts that aren't necessarily known by believers, and they should be. 9 important facts about the development in the womb. So why does this issue matter? Why is it not just a political issue? It's a spiritual issue and is a biblical issue. Number 1, the baby has a distinct genetic code from conception. So it's a separate body. So it cannot be claimed that my body, my choice.
And also, this might be a little like a rabbit trail, but isn't only living things have cells? Right?
I don't know, Ethan. I'm not a biologist.
Like, even if it's like, yeah, right? Even if it's a clump of cells, if that guy, I don't know who he is, if that guy calls himself a believer and believes in a God who created all things and gave it life, and living things have cells, it doesn't matter if it's taking the form of a baby or not. A clump of cells means it's life.
Listen to me. We drive down what we call, Summers Point, Mays Landing Road, and it's right on the edge of the bay and the marsh. And people are pulling over on the side of the road, getting out of their cars because the speed limit's 45, 50 miles per hour. And they're literally running into the traffic trying to save turtles. Like, think about that.
True.
Think about the passion. And, like, people are, like, getting out of their vehicles, and one guy got in the middle of the road, and he's directing traffic, and I'm going, look at this guy. Now, I don't know that guy, but I can use it as an example and say, look at us saving turtles, right? And people are honking and thumbs up, like, good job, dude. Like, great job, man. And, like, when it comes to the baby in the womb,
Yeah, it's this.
it's people like, oh, how dare
Yeah.
you take the rights away?
Why would you do that? Like,
And
come
it's
on.
like, we are a society that is so backwards.
Ugh.
We are absent of God. And when you really break it down, it's not about, I love my autonomy. I love my freedom. I love my rights. It's, I love sin. And that is why they make the argument, I'm going to live how I want. Don't tell me what to do. So it's a baby with its own DNA, its own genetic code from conception. A heartbeat is present after 3 weeks. Think about that, after 3 weeks in the womb. A baby responds to light around 5.5 weeks. Brain waves have been measured as early as 6.5 weeks. By the 8th week, approximately 4,000 permanent body parts are present. It's taking form because it's life. At 12 weeks, the baby can kick its legs, curl his toes, squint, turn his head, open his mouth, swallow. Babies can be born as early as 20 to 24 weeks. And did you know that a lot of these aggressive abortion states are allowing a baby to be terminated before that period and after that period? Think about that. It's evil. 7 months, the baby is 1/3 of its birth weight. Most babies are born after the 8th month mark and can survive. All right, so those are some facts just to kind of have at your disposal when you get into conversations about why life matters. Keep in mind, God is pro-life, and this isn't about having, facts and information to win the argument, because we should care about the souls involved. There are a lot of people that are impacted by pregnancy. People have made decisions out of ignorance and have terminated their pregnancy not knowing. Many of which who are, let's say, shown an ultrasound early on in the process. Think about this. A woman that sees her baby on the screen, it completely decreases their chances of wanting to abort that child because they see it take on human form.
Yeah, it means more
at that point. So I think the church should be more active in helping out with pregnancy centers. I think we should be more proactive in helping people learn how to foster, how to adopt. There's going to be great needs. Let me just share this, and I think this is fascinating content that a lot of people don't know about. Prior to 1973, abortion was a felony in most states. A felony before 1973.
Wow.
Now, Jane Roe, which was a pseudonym for Norma McCorvey, that's where we get Roe v. Wade, challenged Texas state on abortion. And the reason why they heard her case in the first place, she lied about being raped to expedite the case and make its way to the Supreme Court. She later, and you can look this up, she recanted and said that never happened. So the whole basis of that...
Didn't she join the whole pro-life movement too?
I'm not sure about that much, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Maybe don't quote... No one quote me on that one, but anyway, go ahead.
McCorvey didn't actually have an abortion, but the case resulted in the striking down of all of the state laws up to that point that had previously made abortion illegal. Now, a companion case that challenged Georgia state law is Doe versus Bolton, and that was upheld the same year by the same 7 U.S. Supreme Court justices. And that broadened the definition of women's health to make an abortion an on-demand decision that would be legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. Now, like Norma McCorvey, Mary Doe, which was a name given in light of her real name, Sandra Cano, later said she had been lied to and pressured by political activists and even her attorney to pursue this, and she didn't have an abortion either.
Wow.
So you're talking about these cases that were useful as flagship cases. The women were either lying or they were pressured, and that's always the case. Here's some interesting details for you. Though the cases were built on deception and coercion of vulnerable women, they transformed our culture as we know it. The research done from that time till today reports that 744,000 abortions in the United States were taking place in that year alone, in 1973. And the increase of abortions by the year all the way till today. So they say about 63 million abortions, maybe 64 million babies have been aborted. And this is why this issue is so huge to have it overturned. The church's response, as said earlier, should be one of gentleness, sensitivity, having the knowledge about the issue, but also not getting sidetracked with arguments and debates that say we don't care about life beyond the womb. But at the end of the day, understanding why it matters because God says it matters.
Right.
And this isn't about finding a person in the quotes, I have my quote fingers up, pro-life movement who has a better testimony versus I heard somebody from the pro-choice movement who has a better story to tell. And then we pit these two stories against each other, and this is usually how people convince others of what side is actually right, whose story is more compelling, whose story is better. And I'm going, all of that matters, right? Our stories do matter. I have a story. I have a testimony. And in fact, my testimony even includes dealing with the pressure that could be applied to a mom who was told that she should abort her baby because she already had 3. And at this particular time in 1983, she was suddenly ill from what they discovered was mononucleosis. And at the same time, the doctor told her she was pregnant. And it was assumed that because of mononucleosis that the pregnancy would be compromised. So they suggested that because you already have 3 kids, 3 healthy boys, maybe you should consider aborting this pregnancy. And my mom and my father, obviously being believers, said, no, that's not an option. And they would deal with the risks. And on April 13th, 1984, I was born. Right? So I could tell that story, and that's powerful. I wouldn't be here. Tim Tebow has a similar story about his mother being pressured to have an abortion, and she didn't. And obviously Tim's testimony speaks for itself. But I'm okay with the testimonies leading it, but there's always somebody with a better story to tell.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to share this clip from Vodi Bakum, who reminds us as Christians about the true story that should lead this cause. So listen to this clip from Vodi Bakum.
What I want to do is I want to help us think about this issue in a more full-orbed way. Because I believe that in some ways we are losing ground on this issue. I believe we're losing ground particularly in the marketplace of ideas. Because we have, as we'd say where I grew up, we've fallen for the okie doke. We have fallen for a trap. And the trap is that this issue is all about personal stories. And that we have to have more compelling personal stories than the other side. And if we can just come up with compelling personal stories, then we can just win the argument. Ultimately, compelling personal stories usually come down to who's telling the personal story. And there are people with compelling personal stories on the other side. There are people who will talk about having had an abortion and having had their life basically rescued because they weren't saddled with a child, so to speak. So if all we're about is personal stories, then that becomes a problem. If all we're about is personal stories, then we fall for another trap. And this I see in the political arena, where now what we do is, as pro-lifers, we believe that the most important thing that we can do is have, female political candidates, because if you're a man, you can't talk about the abortion issue because you don't have the personal experience or personal story. Bad move, because you have just let our opponents determine the battlefield, which always gives them a tactical advantage. But we fall into it because we already fell into the trap of it's all about personal stories. It's got to be about more than that. If for no other reason than we are people of the book. Amen? Amen. We are people of the gospel. It is not about my personal story. My personal story has very little relevance. Why do I need to give you my story when I have his story that I can tell you? The gospel is actually his story, not mine.
That is amazing. And that is why we lead with his story, the story of redemption, the gospel, that Jesus subjected himself to humanity. He became like us, died for us, rose again from the grave to validate and affirm everything he said about who he was and is. And then the church was birthed with the same mission. We were commissioned to talk about life in the face of death and share truth regardless of how it would be received or even perceived. And that's why these issues like pro-life versus pro-choice, we need to have a biblical worldview and have our perspective grounded in the Bible. And we lead with his story, the story of God's love for us. And we reach out to those, the least of these, the broken, the battered, the confused, the ignored, the marginalized, women who are going through these perhaps unwanted pregnancies and they don't know what to do. We need to interrupt that. We need to point them to centers that would be helpful. We need to be the hands and feet of Jesus, not a cliche, and serve those who are confused or hurting, who may be pressured by society and culture. And we should do whatever we can do to help out those who are in need. This is what it means to be a Christian. This is why God has empowered us for such a time as this. So I want to wrap it up by just encouraging the Christian out there, in light of Roe v. Wade being overturned, to recognize it's time to celebrate, but it's also time to accelerate. It's time to do the work of ministry. If you're part of a church, perhaps ask some of the leaders there how you guys can get involved, whether it's with special abilities ministries, whether it's supporting foster and adoptive families, or helping out at a pregnancy center, offering childcare, helping struggling moms, talking people through these very trying issues, and all the while being, pun intended, an incubator of life. This is what God has called us to. Thank you guys for listening. This was a special episode brought to you by Rechurched. Just wanted to provide some color commentary in light of this recent decision, some history and context in regards to what is or what was Roe v. Wade in the first place, and why this decision was right in God's sight. So, God bless you. Until next time, on Rechurched, Matthew Maher and Ethan Hoover signing out.